Well, I think we're going live here.
We are.
Oh boy. Okay, here we go. Well, welcome to the Voices of Recovery. This is our second podcast, and we have a very special guest with us today. And not only is she a native Floridian like myself, but she's literally born about 15 miles from where I was born at Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami. She has over 34 years of sobriety. And welcome, Deborah. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to have you. Yeah.
Yeah, and don't be nervous. About 75,000 people watching.
Oh.
So, I mean, we are in church. So
wow.
we have to back up on
I was going to say, those sound like pastor's numbers there.
Might be a little inflated.
Just a little.
We'll see. Maybe we'll get there. I'm kidding. That might take a couple months. Listen, I'd like to let the viewing audience know at this time, and we have a disclaimer, at the bottom of it. You can see parental advisory. Because Deborah could get carried away, and I don't know what's going to happen with all of that, or perhaps, but it just depends on what she wants to share. And I'm really, really honored that you came here to do that, because we met really probably 5 years ago or so. First time, right? You were running the program in Citrus County.
Yeah.
And, and then here we are, God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
Here you are as the administrative assistant, a little bit overqualified for your current position at House of Hope, but, really unbelievable that, you showed up again and we have this opportunity together. It's fantastic. So, what I always like to try and do here is just get a little bit of a glimpse of, what it used to be like and what kind of epiphany or, moment of clarity that you had that you said, hey, I can't live like this anymore. What does that look like and how did you get there? And then here you are almost 35 years later, continuous being clean and sober, what that looks like today, because it's a journey. People don't realize that it really is a journey.
Definitely is.
Why don't you give us a little bit of that?
Well, I was in trouble from a very early age, and looking for something, in all the wrong places and finding it often. But, I left the federal penitentiary at 21 years old thinking, this might be a good idea to do something different. But I wasn't willing to, I knew nothing about the disease. I didn't believe that it was a disease. I believed that it was something that I kept reaching for, and I just had to manage it better. And I met this lady at the halfway house, and she told her story at the meeting that we went to. And afterwards, she said, "You're going to sit up front. Did you listen to my story?" And I said, "I did. It's a very good story. I'm very proud of you." And she said, "Could you relate to it?" And I said, "No, not really, because, you were She said, "Why not?" I said, "Well, you were an alcoholic thief and I was a dope fiend dancer, and all I could see were the differences. Here she'd been talking about thoughts and feelings the whole way through her story, but all I could identify with were the behaviors, So she said, "You said was, you don't think you still are?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Why not?" And I said, "Because I am never shooting dope for longer than 2 days in a row, and it's only going to be on the weekends." And, she never lost her composure or anything. She just looked at me, and she knew that I was being honest, for one, and that I had given this some thought, and flawed though it may be, that was a plan of action that I had formed. And she said, "Little girl, I'm your sponsor." Yeah. And I said, "Okay, thank you." I didn't know what that meant. I thought she was going to pay for something, But anyway, but that was the beginning of me going, it might be bigger than me. What I'm going through might really be bigger than me. So I might have to have some help, but I'm not going to take just any help. They have to be professionals, and I had all this stuff mapped out. It just didn't work out that way, And for the next 10 years, she and my parole officer kept bonding me out of jail and putting me back in a program, And at one point, I went into therapy and married my therapist.
How'd that work out?
This was, well, you know, that's something he will never do again. I can assure you that, and nor will I. But, I got married and we had a kid. And I thought my doing time days were over because I'd already completed federal parole and I had completed one state parole. And I thought that's over, And then, in the middle of the divorce, he got custody.
Okay.
And I gave up, So I wound up in the streets. In the beginning of my disease, it was pretty glamorous. I was a young girl making a lot of money and traveling and living in Aspen for a period of time. I had a lot of wonderful things going on. But toward the end, that's not where my disease had me. I was living in the streets, 3 to 5 day binges, passing out in abandoned buildings, waking up in a pool of pee, wondering, how long have I been here? Is there any money or dope around here? And then getting up to do it all over again. So, and wondering if I would ever get to see my kid again, And of course, I got popped for something simple, but I went to do some more time, and I got out, and I really did not want to use. I was going to meetings and stuff, but I would not let fast money go. And in the process of that, some things happened. I wound up with a boatload of dope that I needed to move, and I thought, why not? And so I went on a final binge. That was in 1991, and I called my parole officer, been on a 5-day binge, and I said, listen, I left the halfway house and I need you to lock me up. And she said, for what? And I said, well, I violated. I left the halfway house. And she said, well, that's a technical violation. The prisons are full in Texas. You're going to have to go back under a new number. And I said, okay, thank you. And she said, wait a minute, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to go commit a felony so I can get a new number. And she said, what is going on with you? And I said, listen, I have a kid somewhere. And if there is one decent thing I can do for another human being before I leave this planet, I would like for it to be her. And I do not want her to know the way her mama died. And that's the way this is going to play out.
Right.
Oh, wow. And so she said, where are you? I said, the corn drop, hang on. And she said, stay right there. And she put me in a county detox. And probably the first honest prayer I'd ever said was, because this intake counselor had told me, listen, you have to let go of that kid. And you have to let go of that money. And you have to let go of everything standing in the way of your recovery, because there's nothing you can do for that kid. But maybe one day, if you're lucky, God will see fit and she'll come looking for you. So I knelt down by this cot. And the first honest prayer probably was that I said, God, whoever the F you are, if you even F are, because if you are, that's what I'm thinking and feeling. And I'm going to be real. Please help me to get those 12 steps off that wall and in my life. Yeah. And rescue me from me, because I don't know how to do this anymore. And I can't bear it. And so I went to bed, and the next morning they said, wake up, go eat breakfast. And I said, what is it? And they said, oatmeal. I hated oatmeal. And I said, okay. And I ate that oatmeal. Guess what I eat every morning? Oatmeal. Yeah, I fell in love with it. But I just surrendered, hoping that one day my kid would come looking for me and I'd be able to do something for her, And I had no idea that I'd put her in first grade and raise her.
That's awesome.
That's the way it played out. I was so broke that I couldn't afford childcare, and I liked being invisible in those anonymous meetings, and so I'd have to take my kid with me. And she'd drop a crayon. It's like, oh my God, I'm like a boulder, And I just wanted to be anonymous back there on the back row. And when she tells her story, she says, thank God my mother was so poor that she had to take me to those meetings, because I know when I knew what the problem was, I knew where the solution was. Because her brain was getting it just from sitting there, osmosis. And so, we never know what God is up to, but I think that, for me to surrender, and I'm, a headstrong, make it happen, get her done girl, it took a lot of strength and courage, and even sometimes today, to surrender to God's will and to earnestly seek that instead of my own.
Yeah, because we talked a little bit about that before, right?
Yeah.
About I like to be in charge.
Right.
Sometimes I like to give God a day off.
I know.
And then I pay the consequences, and never gets
Exactly.
it goes really well.
I'm fighting back the urge to take your inventory on that.
We were talking
Please don't.
we were talking before, and I said sometimes when you're, at the pulpit up here giving us the word, you'll say, I don't know about anybody else, but I certainly didn't have a perfect week, and you'll say, Randy, please don't raise your hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, it's really difficult to first of all, when you're so far removed from that, to even think that God cares about you.
Right.
Because why am I in this situation?
Right.
Realizing that we come to the realization we've done those things for ourselves, to ourselves, and then to completely surrender. It's not an easy thing.
No.
But the reality is when we get the real view from a sponsor or somebody we're working with and says, well, how's your life going with you in charge of it?
Right.
And be honest. It's not going so well.
Bit of a train wreck.
Yeah, it's
We call that kind of like the balcony view. You're looking down on these things, and it's not always a pretty picture.
It's not.
Wow, that's a mess. Who made that mess?
Right, exactly.
It's true. So I know that I want you to address
Yeah,
that.
so I wrote down surrender. As you were talking, even before you said the word, I wrote down surrender because that was one of the big messages that I needed to get. It was, I had all these people that were important in my life and all these things that I was doing. And I thought that those were the main important things to address and that I needed to fix everything. And yeah, my sponsor told me, let it go. And it was where I formed this vision. And I talk about it often from the pulpit of, I imagine a brown paper box, a cardboard box right there at the edge of the cross. And I'm dumping things in it. And I'm not caring. It's things that I love. Like when my kids were teenagers, I dumped my teenagers on their heads in those boxes. It was the vision that I had. How do you carry that message to others today? How are you taking that forward?
Well, I think what was very important for me, and I only have my own experience to come from, but is that people were willing to meet me where I was. I was like a baby. I mean, babies don't like the taste of prime rib, and they can't chew it and they can't digest it, but a lot of people in my life are always trying to feed me really rich, good stuff. And I was like, didn't know what to do with it. But when I got to that place of surrender, God saw fit, put people in my life that just came at me. They were people like me, first of all, that were willing to walk with me through the crap. It didn't need to get cleaned up first. It didn't need to, they were willing to meet me where I was. And I think that we have to be willing to do that with other people too, because it made all the difference.
Because you've been working with people in a recovery capacity for how long?
Well, I was 3 years sober when I finished school for counseling in Texas. And then.
It's over 30 years.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. The most rewarding thing, and it's really, that's, I think, why God allowed me full reign for as long as he did, was that if and when I was going to be able to be useful to his other kids,
So what has surprised you the most about your recovery, even now?
I guess we were just talking about this earlier. I guess just being able to see God everywhere and everything. I'll be sitting watching Blue Planet and listening to David Attenborough with tears streaming down my face because I'm in awe of the intelligence behind creation, and just being able to see God working in other people's lives too, on days that, every day's not a great day for me in sobriety with 34 years sober, you know?
And you just went through some other issues that you had.
Yeah,
really
some
come
health issues, yeah. And you know, it's just amazing how God continues to show up and show me things, lessons in each of that. Doesn't even have to be my own experience. I can learn from other people's experience, you know?
Yeah. I often tell people that recovery doesn't fix everything, but it helps us get through the things that come.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
We've got about the same amount of time sober, huh?
yeah, just a couple months apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, you seem in a lot better place.
So-
No, like-
One day at a time, one day at a time.
See, so people from Miami can get sober.
That's right, and especially since you moved as a young child to Williston. They tried to move me to Arcadia when I was that same age, and I was like, that's not happening. So yeah, it's interesting. I know
Yeah.
some of the other things in your life that I find interesting. You know, leaving at a young age, and you know, being a popular kid
Yeah,
in South Florida, in Miami, a cheerleader, right?
yeah,
And then moving to Williston and getting married at a young age
13.
to a guy named Randy,
yeah.
believe it or not, right? Was
Sorry.
it? No, when you told me about him, I'm like, oh boy. That's
Listen,
funny.
your wife is probably watching right
Oh,
now.
she
and
is.
She's sympathizing with this whole
She is
idea of
sympathizing with
marrying a
Deborah. Like, yeah, I know all about marrying a Randy. Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, listen, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you being here and sharing your story with us, and you know, allowing us into your life, because you know it's not an easy thing, you know, to be vulnerable like that. But you know, it's funny because I'll be at a meeting and somebody, you know, told something very personal a couple Thursdays ago at this meeting, and you know, when she got done, you know, I had an opportunity to share. I said, you know, I said, she's working this program because I can tell by her honesty that those things that happened to her aren't that big of a deal. You know, and that's when you realize somebody is really kind of working the program, because they're sharing something publicly in a meeting of, you know, A or NA, that if you shared in public, people would be aghast.
Right.
Yeah. They'd be
Right.
like, what are you saying
Yeah.
or talking about, and who are you? You know, in a meeting, it's kind of like, that's when you can tell that person has let that go, doesn't worry about it, and is sharing it because somebody else needs to hear that. And that's when you really see, I think, God working, you know, around the rooms when you've got that love and that understanding of patience and tolerance for other people.
And it's really kind of the opposite from church, because when we're in church, you know, we think we have to put this mask on,
Right.
and we can't let those things out. And we claim the healing that God's healed us, but yet we've never put a voice to it and those things. And so I appreciate meetings where I can sit and people are vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think church needs to be more like that. And so,
Well, I think
you know,
I
we
think
are.
that you are, and I think Michael is, and I think
Yeah.
that younger pastors that have experienced the things that you've experienced are a little more open about sharing those things, because somebody out there needs to hear that. It's not,
Yeah.
you know, the faithful don't need church.
right.
The people that need faith need church.
Amen.
And
That's
when
right.
they come, you know, they're waiting to hear, well, you know, do I have to put on a tie? You know, back in the day, it was like, okay, let's, you know, I'm going to sit here and, you know, and that's not church anymore. Church
No.
is like, you know, bring it real, because, you know, if you want it, you know, you're going to have to do the work, and you're going to have to take it outside this door, not
Right.
for an hour,
Right.
but for all week long,
That's right.
you know. It's a different situation, but I think it's a better situation because I think it's more honest and open.
Yeah.
And even pastors would never admit anything that's going on with them that was negative or not. And you do a wonderful job of saying, hey, look, these are the things, you know, I struggle too. I'm a person just like you are.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help you, you know, with the word. And we talked about the living document thing. It's not a history lesson. It's
That's
a
right.
living
It's
document.
not. Absolutely. So, Deborah, I wonder, in our closing words, like, what would you say to the person who sits in our congregations, right, all over the globe and is struggling right now, afraid that they cannot release that stuff? They can't, you know, admit those things that they have done. What would you say to them? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, so.
Oh, that's okay. So I guess find someone that is willing to meet with you and talk. Just, they say AA is the language of the heart, and just to have those honest conversations with at least one person. For me, it was a sponsor, but to find someone else. I think that's one of the things, like discipleship programs in churches, to be able to walk hand in hand with another individual without any expectation of anything, and allow God to reveal his will for you and them in that process, so that triad, can be fulfilled, because it's not something that we ever do alone for long. In order to continue to feed, it has to grow, and that means it's going to take.
And that's scripturally based. I mean, James 5:16 tells us to confess our sins to one another, right? So that you may be healed.
Yeah.
And so you're so right that healing happens through that, finding somebody trustworthy.
I heard somebody say one time, it was a pastor actually from the pulpit, and he said, if you want to be forgiven for your sins, ask God.
Yeah.
If you want to be healed, confess to your brother. And I thought, that part right there.
My husband was told a long time ago by a pastor, he said, well, I'm glad that you found Jesus. Jesus Christ will save your soul, but AA will save your ass.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was a great first guest. I'm so glad that you joined us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Randy, who's our sponsor today?
Our sponsor is, again, Pedro Sosa of...
What?
Yeah, I know.
All right,
Go Pedro.
Pedro, thank you so much. And hopefully Pedro will be with us next week.
That would be great.
Yeah.
And he, Green Pastures Lawn Care Services, the Marion County and Villages area in Sumter County, and get a 10% discount if you mention this
10% years
podcast
experience.
to Pedro. And next week we have a new sponsor, I'm told, so I'm looking forward to bringing them on board.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing your truth with us.
Yes,
your,
thank
your
you.
hope and experience. We appreciate that.
Felt completely comfortable.
All right. Well,
All right.
it didn't go off the rails, so until next time.